It's Ramsey Dewey over here in Shanghai, China. Welcome to this edition of Q&A with the Coach. It's been months since I've done one of these, so I'm going to go over a backlog of questions I haven't answered yet. The first one comes from Frawl, who says, Gym wars should be banned from most gyms. Yeah, I agree with that. I concur. They are useless and counterproductive. Sure. How many damaged people do we need to get it finally? It's a rhetorical question, but let's discuss gym wars for a little bit. So he's replying to a video I made about safe sparring and how you shouldn't be getting into gym fights. You should understand what sparring is for and what it's not for, and sparring is not the same as fighting. And we see a lot of young guys just kill each other and waste their brains in gym fights. So how many damaged people, indeed, do we need to see until we finally get it? Unfortunately, it's a case-by-case basis. Our next question comes from D.K. Thales, who says, what about Elvis? Could Bruce Lee beat Elvis? LOL. I think this is intended to be a joke question, but let's get excommunicated from the Church of Jeet Kune Do again and postulate this radical idea that Elvis Presley would beat Bruce Lee in a fight. Discuss, nerds. Discuss in the comments below. Let me know what you think. IDK what name to put 627 says, when are you going to post again? Today. Right now. Mr. Ted Norm says, am I trippin' or were his lips turning purple when he bound his face with the mouthguard? That is insane. Yes. Yes. You probably want some context for that. I won't give it to you. Let's see here. Our next question seems to be a question about my catchphrase, get out there and train. He says, okay, very interesting. Train, says Johnny Wurzel. Train, but train in what? Poor or meh? What's good? That's an excellent question. How should we train? 3 simple things. Do something every day to get stronger. Do something every day to get more flexible. Do something every day to get more technical. Do those 3 things, that's a pretty good start. If your training is not making you stronger, more flexible, more technical, then it's probably not very good training. Our next question from user CZ7W. Guys, what do I keep telling you about using your password as a screen name? Stop. This is how identity theft happens. Anyway, password as a screen name says, so do you think judo or classic jiu-jitsu is a good way to complete striking? Well, neither of those are striking, so I guess you're asking like which one is a way to complement striking rather than to complete striking. I'm not interested in BJJ because I do not like ground fighting. So why are you interested in judo or classical jiu-jitsu? Because that also incorporates ground fighting. That's where the ground fighting of Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu came from Kano Jiu-Jitsu, a.k.a. Judo. That's where it came from. You know what BJJ stands for? You think it's Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. No, basically just Judo. Any form of grappling is better than no form of grappling. Some form of grappling will complement your striking. So if you're not grappling at all, do something. Do something grappling related. ComSo3632 says, I have a question. What weight classes in boxing and MMA produce the most KOs? Anecdotally, I believe it's the lighter weight classes. Can you explain why that is? I don't know. Off the top of my head, we can Google this. Which weight classes have the most KOs? Let's see what Google says. There's an article on Quora.com. from somebody who added up the total fights and knockout wins of the current top 10 heavyweights, lightweights, featherweights, and flyweights. I don't know if this is boxing or MMA he's talking about, but let's click on that link and see what this is all about. A guy has put together his own little study on the internet. So again, I'm skimming over this and I still don't know. Okay, it looks like they're talking about boxing. Okay, so boxing, according to Dan Kulp from Quora, posted this 3 years ago. There seems to be some correlation, but it is not as strong as I would have suspected, and probably not as strong as the conventional wisdom would suggest. This is a small sample size, but it is what I could do quickly and simply. I added up the total fights and knockout wins of the current top 10 heavyweights in boxing, lightweights, featherweights, and flyweights. The heavyweights did have the highest percentage of knockouts at 71%. The lightweights were holding their own, however, at 65%. The percentage plummeted down to 52% for featherweights, but rebounded up to 68% for flyweights. So you're incorrect in your assumption, at least according to Dan Kulp's study, that heavyweights had the highest knockout percentage in boxing, and then the others were actually fairly comparable, except for the featherweights. So I don't know what that's all about. Can we look up similar information on MMA? We probably can. I mean, the UFC, on UFC.com, they keep track of all their records, all the stats, all the strikes landed, submissions, etc. You can look that stuff up. But you had an additional question. Can I explain why it is? Don't know. I don't know, but if you have a theory, let me know. Taekwondo Tim 40 says, Taekwondo Tim, that's alliterative. I appreciate that. Is it possible for someone to have too many masters? Well, Jesus certainly seemed to think so. One cannot serve God and mammon, as he said in the scriptures. Oh, wait, you're not talking about scriptures, you're talking about martial arts. I mean masters in the martial arts sense, not in the biblical sense. Okay, thank you for that clarification before I started preaching a sermon to you, Taekwondo Tim. So too many martial arts masters. I had a Taekwondo instructor who certainly thought so. And when he found out that I was training concurrently in capoeira and Shotokan karate, he got really mad. And he was like, you can't do that. That's not the way. Scree. That didn't go over well. The limiting factor in martial arts training is time. It is possible to schedule too much on your plate for the time that you have in a day. That's possible. It is possible to train too much to the point where it's no longer productive. But if you want to be a well-rounded fighter, you're probably not going to get all of the information and specialization that you need from just one dude. So it is good to cross-train. But can you cross-train too much? I suppose you can do anything too much. Water is good for you. You got to stay hydrated, folks. But if you drink too much water, as in gallons and gallons of it, in a single sitting, you can die of water intoxication. That's a real thing. It's very difficult to drink that much water, but it's possible. You can do it. A glass of water is great when you're thirsty, not when you're drowning. So I'm really just trying to emphasize the principle of moderation here. Moderation in all things, even the good ones. Maybe especially the good ones. Sims JW says, I always thought holding the phone was bad. How can you protect yourself if your hand is connected to your face? So let's get a phone in my hand. So let's say I'm talking to someone on the phone, or more likely, people these days are scrolling on their phone looking at a screen. My first cell phone, I got it when I was 30 years old, and it was a very simple phone. You could make phone calls, you could send text messages, and that was it. That was it. No screens, no YouTube, no internet, no games, nothing like that. So I suppose people might be walking around like this. I see that sometimes, or people walking around like this, or people distracted by whatever electronic device. So I guess this is a self-defense question. So you're inviting the punch. Yeah, it's blocked, but your hand takes damage too. You mean like you're holding a phone right here and someone punches you right there? It's not quite the same as covering up to block a hook like that, where your wrist is braced tightly against your head and your hand's on the back of the head protecting that. If you're holding a phone here, I mean, that's just going to smack that and go right into your chin and cause some damage to you. So I'm not quite sure what the context is. This question was left on a video titled Sparring Without Headaches. It's been a while since I made that one, but if memory serves me, this guy asked me a question because he was apparently sparring too hard and leaving sparring class with a headache. Did I go on a tangent about talking on phones? I don't know. We're going to skip this one because I don't get it. J. Delingning says, people really give themselves cauliflower ear? ? Yeah, some crazy dudes do, because they want to look like they wrestle, but they don't want to go through the actual wrestling. I've seen some idiots actually do that. They will take their ears and smash the cartilage, and try to get cauliflower ear on purpose. That sounds like it would hurt. Yes. Yes, it would. So why don't they just take up wrestling? Good question. Because wrestling is hard, and people are lazy. That is indeed the craziest thing I've heard in a while. Okay. Andy says, isn't Krav Maga just a name for an Israeli generic fighting system? It isn't specifically defined what it consists of. I could be wrong on this, but if the instructor knows karate, expect to be taught some karate. If it's wrestling, I guess you might end up learning some wrestling. It could be anything the instructor knows. It could be really good or garbage. Okay, this is a comment on my very popular video, my thoughts on Krav Maga. Why is this video so popular? I don't know. I assume it has something to do with the fact that I made this video with a shirt off in the middle of the summer after training, and I'm showing off my abs in the thumbnail there, and people are like, ooh, abs, Krav Maga, let's look at this. Long story short, I basically said, Krav Maga sucks, and people got mad. Isn't Krav Maga just a name for an Israeli generic fighting system? What does Krav Maga mean in Hebrew? I don't remember. Somebody write that in the comments down below. It is the name of the hand-to-hand combat system that the Israeli Defense Force uses. In that video, I did talk about two students I had who were former Krav Maga instructors in the Israeli army, and they explained to me a little bit of what that meant. It was basically just a 2-week hand-to-hand military combat course. There's only so much you can teach in 2 weeks. But Andy brings up an interesting point, not just about Krav Maga, but about any system with a name that you recognize, whether it's karate or taekwondo, kung fu, whatever. The name on the sign outside is not going to be consistent with what is taught inside, most likely. There are going to be biases based on that instructor's personal experience, his teaching style, and whoever else happens to be there at the gym to train with you. You can have a radically different experience at Karate Gym A and a Karate Gym B, and go to a different town over. Totally different martial art, even though it has the same name on the sign outside the dojo. Anastasia 256 says, isn't strategic warfare relatively advanced as far as ancient civilizations go? This is left on my video, Ancient Kung Fu War Fantasies Debunked and the Universality of Feathered Serpent Gods. Isn't strategic warfare relatively advanced as far as ancient civilizations go? Is the implication there that strategic warfare was too advanced for ancient societies because they were too primitive? Let's read on, see what the rest of this question is. That is, not every ancient or medieval army would have utilized strategy as much as the famous strategic winds, which would turn the battle more into a battle of skill or weaponry rather than group strategy. I'm also thinking of medieval knights and how they were basically tanks in the time in terms of their armor. Surely, as a single knight, if unopposed by another knight, and surrounded by unarmored peasants, conscripts would have been able to deal damage to several unarmored opponents comparatively easily? Question mark. Interesting, we have this long paragraph assertion, question mark. That's a funny way to write, not a question, but an assertion, pretending it's a question. Isn't strategic warfare relatively advanced as far as ancient civilizations go? Well, not the way you're thinking. You're thinking that medieval warfare was too primitive to delve into strategies such as battle formations, and because you're thinking that, you are grossly incorrect. Battle formations predate medieval times. Yeah. So they were definitely using battle formations to win battles in medieval times. And it was not about a whole bunch of one-on-one melee battles across a battlefield like we see in the movies, as much as you're trying to make it sound like that. So you're wrong, Anastasia, you're wrong. Hi, Coach, says SB25. When you get into top mount or top half guard, and the bottom guy holds you down with double underhooks or double overhooks, how do you get out of that and posture up? Well, there are a few things you can do. So if you're on top and the other dude is grabbing you with his double underhooks and pulling you down, trying to not to get beat in the face or panicking or whatever they're doing, crossface. Put two hands right across the chin, not the neck, not the face, but right on the chin, because this is the lever that moves the face around, just like we punched that. Put two hands, one over the other, push it, posture up, meaning look straight up at the lights, and you're going to break those grips. And then you can do what you want. Fairly simple thing. Let's review. You're on top, dude on the bottom gets the underhooks, pulls you down, breaks your posture, crossface, push, posture. You're good to go. You're golden. Interesting question from Mr. Plam, who says, Hi. When I was little, I was bullied too. How can I forgive my tormentors? Forgiveness is fascinating. Because, as I've mentioned before on this channel, it is not excusing bad behavior. A lot of people think that forgive means to excuse bad behavior, and that's not what it means. It means to let go of negative feelings that hold you back. Negative feelings that you hold toward another person, to let that go and move on. That's not Ramsey Dewey's definition of the word forgive. That is the definition of the word forgive. Once again, it is not to excuse bad behavior. They did something bad. They did something inexcusable. We're not excusing it. We're not justifying what is unjust. We're forgiving a person. We are recognizing this is another person. I could be that person. That person is me in another life, basically. That person, yeah, man, it's incredibly easy to judge somebody else and think they're the worst, they're Hitler, they're Satan, I hate them. Boo, hiss. And I can relate to this because I've been wronged a number of times in my life. But it's also important for me to remember I've also wronged others in my life. And by that By that stick that we measure others with, we shall also be measured. Don't forget that. Sometimes forgiveness takes time to understand. But it's important. Because holding on to a grudge. Holding on to a grudge, friends. It's like, was it the Buddha who said, it is like holding on to a hot coal and hoping that essentially holding that coal is going to burn somebody else? Doesn't work that way, does it? Here's a Master Wong question from DJ Jonah 33. So this guy, me, is saying that Master Wong is wrong. He's commenting on my famous Master Wong rear naked choke controversial video where I showed some of the problems with how Master Wong was teaching the rear naked choke and how to defend the rear naked choke. Yes, I pretty much said Master Wong is wrong. What he taught there was incorrect. Factually, demonstrably incorrect. Not good technique. Jonah's question, why don't you be in one of his videos? Oh, that's a great idea, Jonah. Master Wong, why won't you let me be in one of your videos? Let's do a video together, Master Wong. And then, says Jonah, explain why he's wrong. Yes, and then I will explain to you specifically why you were wrong in person, face-to-face, Master Wong. That's a great idea. Thanks, Jonah, for this sweet idea. Now, certainly Master Wong will see this and say, yes, let's make a video together so Ramsey Dewey can tell me in person why I'm wrong. No, wait, this is a rhetorical question from Jonah. No, you have to criticize this technique so you can gain popularity. I've been following Master Wong for more than 8 years now. I thought this question was written in good faith, and now I see it was sarcasm. You had me going there for a bit, Jonah. I'm disappointed. Joe Chicago says, Ramsey, have you ever tried or watched French savate? I've watched savate. I have sparred with savateurs. I have not competed in the sport of savate. Next question. Rodrigo I don't know how to say that second part of this name. Rodrigo says, Ramsey, the data of the 3 months to learn the French drop trick had me guessing. The French drop, it's a disappearing coin trick that I discussed. And it takes about 3 months to learn. Because it's a sleight of hand move. You got to train your hands and your fingers to move the right way in order to do this. It takes some time in order to look magical when doing magic tricks. It's not just a pick up and play sort of thing. So he wants to know where I learned about the French drop trick. I learned it from a guy named Jeff Lindsay. Jeff Lindsay, his biggest internet presence is as an apologist, apologist for the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. Not employed by the church, but he does make a lot of Mormon apologetics content on the internet. It's quite interesting. Very smart, well-read fellow, but he's also an amateur magician and quite good at disappearing coin tricks such as the French drop, so I learned about that from him. Am I a magic aficionado? I'm interested in magic. I'm not particularly good at close-up magic, but I am very interested in it, specifically because of how it relates to fakes and feints in martial arts. If you have the skills to make it appear, to create the illusion that things are disappearing right in front of somebody's eyes, those skills are very transferable to, hey, look over here. Not at that one. Edgar wants to know, he says, eye pokes are very effective. Why else are they banned in MMA? Are eye pokes banned in MMA because of their effectiveness? I think they're banned in MMA because In the year 2000, the New Jersey State Athletic Control Board, the boxing commission that wrote the rules of MMA, imported boxing traditions into the sport of MMA. That's why we have the rules of MMA. X Messina says, do I think that kickboxing is the natural evolution of karate? Kind of, and kind of no. It's kind of a forced evolution of karate. Now, some of you might be thinking, well, hold on a second, Ramsey. Didn't American kickboxing come from full contact karate? Yeah. But where did full contact karate come from? You know, that old sport of kicking and punching, full contact, when dudes wore their karate pants and their belts into a boxing ring and punched and kicked each other, as opposed to light contact or point karate. But how much was that like actual original Okinawan karate? I would argue very little. Because karate was forced into an unnatural evolution, if you will. In other words, it was changed into something very different from what it originally was. Now, a lot of people, when they hear things like that, they assume that karate was originally just punching and kicking harder in softer spots and ripping people's throats out and whatnot. However, the evidence seems to indicate that the original karate was a lot more grappling and a lot less punching and kicking. In fact, the very forms, the kata of karate, indicate that same thing. A lot more grappling, a lot less punching and kicking. However, there are some very important historical and fairly modern historical reasons for why so many kicks and punches were added to the karate curriculum. And now, essentially, kickboxing and karate are almost synonymous except the uniform. And so it's almost 100% grappling and 100% striking, very little grappling, except once in a while you might have a karate class that also does judo. Jesse Enkamp has an excellent video, a number of excellent videos on karate and the history of karate. And I would recommend his video on why, and I don't remember the name of it, but the subject, why we see so many high kicks in karate today, whereas in the old days we did not, and where those kicks actually came from. It's a very well-researched video. Jesse's very good at doing research. Unknown K9P1G writes a question. BJJ, huh? Question mark. Is that the whole question? Oh, you mean the watered down and safe version of BJJ that is like 99% of every BJJ school now, not the original and hard style of Rickson Gracie? You mean how when Rickson Gracie was competing in Vale Tudo fights, and he would jump on people's backs, flatten them out to the floor, and then start beating them in the back of the head with his elbows? You mean BJJ is watered down now because in the average jiu-jitsu gym today, we don't elbow each other in the back of the head with our elbows? I have actually left several BJJ schools or even MMA schools having BJJ classes because they are training to get beaten. Oh, I wonder how much BJJ experience does unknown K6P1G actually have? I'm very curious. This is a long paragraph, but we'll read it. We'll see if he answers this question. They start out on the ground and butt scoot. It's ridiculous. You know what? I would concur. I would say starting on the ground and butt scooting is not conducive to the goals of jiu-jitsu being universal for mixed martial arts, for self-defense, or for jiu-jitsu competition. Specifically because those scenarios start standing. Even if you're a guard puller, you should start your rolls standing so that you can practice getting into position so that you can play guard in a tournament scenario. Because if you don't know how to optimally get the grips and pull guard correctly, the other guy is going to pass your guard once you flop on the ground. And it's going to be a flop, not a technical guard pull, if you don't practice it, starting from the feet. Are there times to do positional drilling, such as starting on the ground? Yes, of course. Of course. But starting on your butt, facing another dude on his butt, starting on your knees, facing another dude on the knees, I don't think that's a great way to train. Now, people are concerned about the danger of uncontrolled falling body weight, but they'll phrase that as, takedowns are dangerous. No, uncontrolled falling body weight is dangerous. That's the most dangerous thing in jiu-jitsu. That's why guard jumping, not guard pulling, but guard jumping was banned for white belts in IBJJF competition. Do you know what the most dangerous technique in jiu-jitsu tournaments is? Jumping guard. It's not heel hooks, which are illegal. It's not knee reaping, which is illegal. It's none of the illegal stuff that will sometimes happen, then competitors will get disqualified. No. It's the perfectly legal, except for white belts, guard jumping. Because what does that do? Produces uncontrolled falling body weight onto the knees, which cause them to bend in backwards and buckle and tear up the PCL and the other ligaments and cartilage of the knee and cause some pretty catastrophic injuries. You can see some pretty gnarly compilations of people jumping guard and destroying knees here on YouTube. I even posted one myself. Don't watch it if you have a queasy stomach. But there's more to this long paragraph I didn't even read. Anyway, a BJJ black belt. Let's see here. Can you please really struggle and fight and stop scooting on your butt? BJJ black belt is like a Taekwondo black belt now. Many of these guys and girls train safe. Oh, how dare they train safely? What a bunch of jerks. It's sport, tradition, recreation, and fitness now. Terrible, terrible, terrible that they are practicing sports and traditions and recreation and fitness. How could they? The same thing happened to karate and taekwondo. Once hard and serious arts, now recreational McDojo sports. You have every right to be calling out and making jokes about modern BJJ and the black belts. Joke or not. It's just true. BJJ is no longer the fighting art of Rickson Gracie. All I tell people now is you train at a serious MMA gym with serious fighters and coaches where serious fighters or you are doing nothing and learning nothing. I just tell people now to copy Khabib's game plan if they are serious. Copy Khabib's game plan. Otherwise, you are a McDojo sport. If you're not Khabib, you are not a real. You're in a McDojo. Setting the record straight here. Don't want to do serious sparring and seriously check your style or techniques? Then you are recreation and sport. And many of these BJJ black belts are doing that and training people for that, but falsely claiming it's self-defense and serious combat. I'll quote Show Enough, the Shogun of Harlem from the last... What was that movie called? With Bruce Leroy and Shonuff, the Shogun of Harlem. The Last Dragon, was that it? Yeah. Is this a comedy post? I can't even tell. Anyway, we'll leave that as it is. Let's find a serious question. Heaven Tewa says, do you know of any instances of a trainer who disliked the person they were training, deliberately teaching them a move that won't work and or that will result in the person being injured? Or, at least you suspect an example of this being so. You mean like Wimp Lo from Kung Pao Enter the Fist? You ever seen that movie? There's this character and he's just really bad at fighting. And they're like, this is Wimp Lo. We trained him wrong on purpose as a joke. And then Wimp Lo is like, watch me use my face to your foot technique. I am winning because my face is bleeding now. Yeah. So there's more to this question. I had a trainer who didn't like me, and he once showed me a move where you kick someone in the groin with your left foot. And when he therefore kneels over, with your left foot still lifted, with it chambered, you hit him with a jab, with your fist held vertically. Let me see if I can process this. Okay, so the trainer who didn't like you showed you a move where you kick someone in the groin with your left foot, okay? And therefore he keels over. Will he, though? You're going to get radically different reactions when you kick people in the groin. Generally, from what I've seen, people tend to move away from you. There's this fantasy scenario that's often taught in self-defense schools and traditional martial arts schools where you throw a low blow and then the guy bends over and breaks his posture for you and gives you his head on a silver platter. And no. If you watch what actually happens when people get kicked in the groin, they move away from the danger. That's the instinctive reaction, to move away from you, to make space rather than to bend over. But we see this in the movies so much. I don't know why it's such a common movie trope. Hit somebody down low and then they bend down. Right. Have you ever experienced that? Have you ever hit somebody low and then they bent over for you? There are all kinds of cool ways to break posture, and I've got a bunch of tutorials on that on this channel, and none of them are hit 'em low. Striking will produce very unpredictable results often, whereas grappling, the results are much more predictable, specifically because you are essentially putting the round hole into the round peg. Sorry, I said that backward. The round peg into the round hole. The grappler being the round hole. And the other person just fits there and they can't move and they can't do anything about it. So their behavior becomes predictable because you've limited their movement. But with striking, there's all this space, so the movement is highly unpredictable. Anyway, I figured if I did this to someone, the guy would fall on me and knock me down with him on top of me. That's possible. I told another trainer whom I think disliked me that I have trouble keeping my balance upon finishing throwing a straight right punch. He responded by having me press the insides of my thighs together. Okay, that's kind of odd. Every time I did this, I wobbled and felt like I could be easily pushed to the ground. You probably could. People often have a hard time teaching because they teach what was taught to them instead of trying to figure out what is the best thing I could say or do right now to help this other person learn how to do the thing correctly. I'll give you an example. Learning Chinese. Chinese is a tonal language, and there are 4 tones, and the tones are usually taught something like this. The first tone is like, ah. You just sing out a straight tone like, ah. It doesn't go up or down or anything like that. And then you've got a tone which is kind of like shouting. It goes, ah. It goes down. And then you got like a rising tone. But then the last tone, everybody teaches that one wrong. They say it's like this. It's like it goes down and then up. It's like, oh, and they'll say that. But then when you repeat the sound that they're making, everybody will tell you, no, that's wrong. You don't say it like that. And they'll be like, it's like getting punched in the gut. Then you go, ugh. And then you make that sound that they just made, and they'll be like, no, that's wrong. Like, take the word hao, for example. Hao, it means good. You probably heard it in an expression like, ni hao ma. How are you? You good is what that literally means. Now, nobody says, ni hao. Doesn't happen. That sounds incredibly wrong. That is incredibly wrong. Here's what they should be telling you. That 4th tone, it's not a punch in the gut tone. It's a vocal fry. It's a vocal fry. It's a sound that middle-aged white women on the west coast of America who love the Kardashians make. It's like a They'll tell you it's a low tone, but it's really just a vocal fry. So it's like hao, ni hao. Just throw in some vocal fry, and there's the 4th tone right there. But nobody tells you that. Nobody tells you that. There are always more effective ways to teach things. But I've seen young guys copy the way they were taught, even though the way they were taught was stupid and wrong and consistently produced stupid and wrong results. But they do it because they just assume it's the right way to go. This is one of the problems with many martial arts. I see this in jiu-jitsu a lot, and I'll explain exactly what I mean by that. There's a common consensus that you shouldn't teach jiu-jitsu until you get a black belt. And I think that's dumb and stupid. Because while you may be a black belt at learning and performing the technique, if you wait until you're a black belt to teach, you will be a white belt at teaching. You will be completely inexperienced and absolutely suck at teaching. You will have never troubleshooted any teaching methodology before. And as soon as you run into a trouble spot, what is that brand new teacher going to do? They are going to repeat what was taught to them. They are going to teach the way they were taught, even if it is bad and wrong and stupid and produces the wrong result. And it's not necessarily because they don't like you or they're trying to teach you wrong like Wimp Lo. It's because they're white belts at teaching. All right, guys. I'm going to leave it at that for this session of Q&A with the coach. If you have additional questions for a future episode of Q&A with the coach, please leave them in the comments down below. I love the comments. It's one of my favorite things about YouTube. And I love corresponding with you guys. Thank you for the questions. Keep them coming. Thanks for watching. Now get out there and train.